You are back with the show that is all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. That's right. You're listening to Get Down to Business, and I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Get Down to Business is brought to you in part by Everett Wealth Solutions, a registered investment advisor and financial planning firm, a fiduciary advisor that helps you create your personal wealth. Find them at everettwealthsolutions.com or call 708-771-7777, everettwealthsolutions.com or call 708-771-7777. So last time that we talked with our next guest, the political world looked just a little bit different. We're privileged to be joined once again with my good friend Paul Miller from the Paulie Group. He knows just about everything that's going on in the world of politics in general, but certainly a lot about Republican politics. Paulie, it's been an interesting few weeks, hasn't it?
It's definitely been an interesting few weeks. And with the summer starting and the good weather, it's all about campaigns, and campaign season has begun.
Campaign season has begun, and let's talk. Let's start with Washington and work our way back to Illinois. This show, for those of you that are just listening to us, it's all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that people speak up and listen to these updates about what's going on and how politics impacts your small business and, frankly, your job opportunities. It's so important, and Paul is such a valuable asset. So let's start with Washington. So last week, the political world was, I'd say, flabbergasted is probably an understatement to learn that the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, was lost in a primary campaign, an almost unheard of occurrence. Paul, what's going to be in Washington? We've already elected a new majority leader, but are things going to change out there?
I don't think they're going to change too much. Obviously, people were very surprised about what happened with Eric Cantor's defeat, and everyone out there has their own analysis. One of the big questions is was Cantor's defeat really a result of his position on immigration reform? And that's obviously a big question that really impacts businesses, the economy, as well as where people just feel, what's the Constitution? What are the laws that the government should be enforcing, especially on our borders? But I don't think it's going to change too much. I think people are going to stay with the positions that they've had before. And one of the reasons is what's coming out is that immigration might have had something to do with his defeat, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was no longer in touch with his district. And one of the things that they always say is that all politics is local, and he had angered a lot of his constituents and a lot of the party people back home in Virginia. They felt he was no longer representing them, and that's where the defeat came. So you're hearing about the Tea Party, you're hearing about immigration. It really had to do with the fact that he just ignored everything going back home, and it came and it bit him at the end.
And it's such a tough balance for somebody. You almost can blame him specifically, but it's tough for anybody in the leadership. They have to balance a lot of things. They have to balance the responsibilities of their district and the responsibilities of trying to keep their caucus together. So it's hard to be in more than one place at a time. And I think
during an election year, don't forget here, during an election year, they're out and about constantly trying to raise money. So that takes them away even more so than they would normally do in in any so-called off year.
So Eric Cantor was, I'd say, very well connected in the world of big business. Mm-hmm. Kevin McCarthy, his new replacement as the House Majority Leader, is pretty tied into the world of tech out in California. So do you think that we're going to be seeing any substantial changes in the policy on business?
I don't think from the Republican side you're going to still see a very pro-business party. What you might also see, though, is maybe more of a reach out to the tech sector. Most of the tech sectors out there have been leaning towards the left. It's always been known about how Google and organizations like that have to support Democrats much more than Republicans. Depending on the relationships he's built over the years, some of that might change. That can impact campaign finances. One thing Republicans may want to try to do with this new tech connection, I would call it, is they may want to try to find a way to use that to their advantage during campaigns. One thing Democrats have done probably since 2006 is they've utilized technology so much better than the Republicans. Is this something that he's going to try to introduce? We're only going to find out in November on that front.
That's for sure. And final thought on Washington before we talk some Illinois politics. Our representative out here in Illinois, I'm not sure how many of our listeners he represents, but Peter Roskam, he almost made it. He almost made it as the House Majority Whip, but he didn't. Is that a good thing, bad thing?
It's a moot point. Roskam wasn't going to win it because he's from Illinois, and right now, you're dealing with a state that him becoming whip is not going to really bring anything back from any type of political gain. While his replacement, I believe, is from California, and that's still a very blue state. There's some strides that could be made out there. But I don't think Roskam had a chance from the beginning. And he's still going to be a very, very powerful figure. I think Peter Roskam is going to be a name that you're going to see in the future for Speaker of the House. So don't count Peter Roskam out at all. Does it hurt Illinois or take away from any of Illinois' power? The answer to that is no. Truth be told, Illinois is not exactly a very powerful state right now when it comes to the GOP and the House overall.
That's true. So let's talk what's been going on in Springfield. Session finished. It's now completely and totally political. You've got a number of races for the state house, for the Senate, and of course our very popular race for governor. What's been the latest in that race? I know there's been a lot of back and forth on both sides. Let's talk Pat Quinn and Bruce Rauner.
Okay, well, first of all, Bruce Rauner, some of the big developments with him has been obviously the continuation to raise a ton of money. Recently, he had a contribution of, I believe, it was $2.5 million from Mr. Griffin, who I think is part of the company. I think it's called the Citadel. Someone who actually has been involved on and off the few years with GOP politics, and someone who's also even given to Democrats. He is obviously now standing behind Bruce Rauner. He's showing you with his pocketbook. But the truth of the matter is that this is one race where money is not going to be a big issue because both candidates are going to have it. What Bruce Rauner might be having a little trouble with right now is that he's recently come out with some position policies, and they've just lacked details. So he's taken a little bit of a beating, especially from Crane Chicago Business, some other members of the press. The bottom line, though, is the question is, does that really matter to the voter? And in my opinion, the answer is no. Illinois is a state that, I'm sure you've talked about on your show, that unfortunately, economically, they are struggling possibly worse than any other state in the nation. And people really want to see some type of change in Springfield. They need that economic help. Is Bruce Rauner going to be the one to take over from Pat Quinn? I think the odds on him right now are good that he will be, he would definitely be in the lead right now. Pat Quinn doesn't seem to really be able to get anything positive going for his campaign. But, the news isn't all bad for Democrats because the reality is that unfortunately for Republicans, the House and Senate GOP have not put up strong slates for both the House and the Senate. So you're not going to see any change over there. You might see a swing of a couple seats in both the House and the Senate, going either way. But unfortunately, more localized with State House and State Senate, you're just not going to see much happening.
And as we all know, politics, things change very, very quickly. Things can happen. And in the gubernatorial race, you never know what can come out about either of the candidates. I know Pat Quinn's dealing with a little troubled program that he funded a few years ago, and Bruce Rauner's got that position or the policy that he can't seem to get to the finish line. So there's going to be it's going to go back and forth, and while the odds might be in favor of one candidate right now, things can change, and certainly in any of the individual races as well. So Paul, we have got about a minute remaining. Can you tell us sort of, again, how people can stay engaged, any particular websites you want people to look at, and, of course, how people can follow up with you?
Well, in Illinois, I think one of the best websites to check out is IllinoisWatchdog.org. just as it's spelled out. You actually can go to the website watchdog.org, go to the state section of Illinois. They got a lot of great coverage coming out of Springfield. And people do have to stay engaged. As far as me, you can always count and get me at the Paulie Group, Paulie group.com. Happy to take questions, hear anything going on. One thing I want to bring up for your listeners is an issue that's starting to develop in Washington and back home is the price of gas.
And that's an issue that we got to follow. That's an important issue for business owners to keep track of. Business owners, people going to work, employees, everybody has to watch that issue. Follow up with Paulie Group, thepauliegroup.com. Great information, great political updates. We appreciate it. After the break, we're going to be talking more small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. You're on with Get Down to Business with Shalom Klein.